And so now joining me on stage is Julianne Moore.
Is that better? Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. That means a lot coming from a bunch of actors. It really, really does. It's very heartfelt. And please excuse my attire. I look like I'm going to the opera. I just literally came right from the premiere thing downtown, and I am extremely overdressed. So. But thank you guys. Thank you for coming to the screening, and thank you for that reception. That was tremendous. Thank you. Hey, Connie! Connie should stand up. Connie is my stand-in many, many times. Stand up, Connie. Yeah. All right. Good to see you. Okay. All right.
Well, hello.
Hi.
So, did you do anything fun this weekend?
It was fun. Thank you very much. It was super fun, and it's always nice to be included and super nice. We made this movie not even a year ago. Right. It was kind of crazy because we shot it last March very quickly, and so the fact that we got financed, and then that we got distribution, and then we were out within the same calendar year is really crazy because it doesn't happen very often. So then to be at the Golden Globes on top of that it kind of blew my mind.
Well, I know you did like 4 months of research before shooting.
Yeah.
How long was the shoot?
Oh, like less than a month, 20 days. I don't even know how many days. I keep saying 23, and then somebody said 19, and then so I don't remember. Do you remember? Yeah. Wah, wah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Do you usually do that much research?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the part. If I had to play the guitar, I'll learn how to play, 3 chords. You learn what you need to learn to do to kind of acquit yourself honorably. In this case, I had absolutely no experience with this disease. I've been fortunate enough not to have any personal contact, and that's very rare because it's a pretty prevalent disease. So I said to Rich and Wash, I didn't want to represent anything that I hadn't seen, and I didn't know anything about. So I kind of embarked on this long period of research, which was really exciting. And I think you guys probably know that when you were kind of let inside something that you don't know anything about, it was enlightening. I spoke to lots of women who'd been recently diagnosed with what they call early onset or younger onset. I spoke to clinicians and researchers at Mount Sinai. I talked to people at the National Alzheimer's Association, people at the New York Alzheimer's Association. I went to support groups, people who kind of met like once a month or every couple of weeks to do like mental exercises and kind of for emotional resources. I went to a long-term care facility. I watched all the docs. I mean, it was pretty extensive.
Well, what is most stupendous about this performance, which is a stupendous performance,
thank you very much,
is you did all of this meticulous research and then you kind of had to throw it all away and just embody this woman.
Yeah.
So how did you get into that mindset when those later scenes were being filmed?
Well, I think every actor knows that, and this is one of the things, the old things they teach you in drama school that you think are useless when you're there. She's like, what do you mean I need to be relaxed? That's baloney. I do my best work when I'm upset, all of that stuff. So all that stuff that they've taught you in drama school about really knowing what's going on and really being receptive to what's happening, all that's what comes into play. So everything that I did in terms of research, all the observation, all the interviews, all the specificity in the questions. Like, I remember a woman said to me, you're standing in the shower and you're looking at the shower doorknob and you don't know what it is, and you don't know, but you know that's how you get out. But you don't know whether you're supposed to pull it in or push it out. So you just stand there for a while until it kind of comes to you, you know what's going to happen. So that, that kind of stuff, that weird, stuff about when you're lost. I said, what does that feel like? And they said, well, it doesn't feel like being lost. It feels like a panic attack. Like you can't breathe and your heart's starting to pound and you don't know where you are, and kind of, all the spatial stuff that happens. Oh, anyway, so all of that stuff, you start to think about that, making it really specific, and then thinking about what that means when it happens, and then the act of trying to fight against it. So, because one of the things that I noticed is that there's this idea that Alzheimer's patients are, people are somehow kind of checking out, if they're not there. And what I saw in my research is that people were working very, very hard with cognitive difficulties to stay present and to figure out what was going on and try to understand what the next step was. It was exhausting, thinking of what they were going through. And then even as an actor, I was like, those are the days when I was the most tired, because you have, it's that idea about working really hard to be there.
Well, with the shoot this fast, did you do a lot of, and you didn't shoot chronologically, correct?
No, you never do. No matter what the movie, what the size of the budget, you're always going to shoot by location. And because we had such a little amount of time, Kristen and I shot the very, very last scene of the movie on the 9th day. So I was like, I don't know what to do, yeah.
Well, I know with Magnolia, you did a lot of really meticulous work to trace the trajectory of her hysteria. I think you just told Alec Baldwin.
Right.
Were you doing that same kind of work with this?
Yeah, and like I said, everything that you see, all of the physicality that you see, actually, particularly as the character becomes more declined, was taken from real life, A lot of the stuff that I do in the very, very last scene, I observed in a long-term care facility with a woman who had been there for a couple of years, who was only 64 and had no language. She had completely lost language. And she was lovely, really, really lovely, and very responsive to me physically. And that, she no longer spoke, but when I leaned forward, she would lean forward, and I would, gesture to the television and say something about the movie. She would gesture to the television, and she was really trying to kind of keep up. And all of the caregivers, and they said, oh, she is the most lovely woman. She has wonderful manners, and we just love her. And it was clear that she was there. She was really, her self was there. And so, yeah, so she was a kind of a model for me in that very last scene.
Well, and did it help with a shoot so short that you already had worked with Alec Baldwin before?
Yes.
Which I have to say, this movie totally eradicated my memory of your guest spots on 30 Rock. It wasn't until a week later that I remembered that you had played his girlfriend.
Thank you. I love me some Alec Baldwin. Yeah. So Alec is an extraordinary actor and an extremely generous person, and so loves acting and loves people and is so vital and so alive and so very male, and yeah, right? Hot. So he's got a big presence and a lot of energy, and I had always, when I would get offered these romantic comedies, for middle-aged people, I would email Alec and be like, hey, I got the script. Would you like this? Would you think about doing this? And he'd call me up right away, going like, no, Jewel, no, not for me. And then one of the times that I had emailed him about something, he said, don't you have some drama? And I said, well, the money had just come together for Stella Alice. I said, I do, but I think the part's too small for you. I don't imagine that you'll ever do it. He said, send it. And he said, yes. I know. And I spent the next 4 months waiting for him to drop out. But he never did. I was pretty lucky.
Well, how did the rest of the cast come together? Were you in auditions for things, doing chemistry?
No, we didn't. God, Rich and Wash are extraordinary and so hopeful, and I feel like I was so I don't know, what's that word when you're just callous and like jaded. I was so jaded. I'm like, when they came to me with the project and I said, when do you want to do it? They said like a year from now. I'm like, forget it. You'll never get the money. We're never going to get the money. It's going to be years. And then the same thing with Alec. I was like, well, we can ask him, but he's never going to do it. And they said yes. And they said we had a great meeting with Kristen Stewart. And I was like, ha, 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 ha. So, and then she said yes, and Kate came aboard, and then they cast Hunter. And then every great actor in New York every day I showed up, there was like another great actor. Steve Kunken, played my my neurologist. Yeah, right? So I was like, what the hell? So every day, it was a pleasure, and it just seemed to come together in a really lucky way.
And you're an actor who kind of draws on that energy on set. Like, you're a really collaborative actress, right?
Thank you. I hope so. Yeah, thanks.
That's what I've heard.
Okay, rumor has it.
So were you all kind of in it together on this? I mean, you had to be, right?
We had to be. It was so fast, and you just had to be ready. You had to pay attention. We were all in it together. We didn't have a lot of time. We had very little light. It was all shot in New York City, or in its environs, because we had a tax credit here, so it can't be more than an hour outside. All those beach scenes were in Long Beach. With the house near Columbia was like on 148th Street. So that was great. It was really great.
What was it like working with two directors on a project like this?
Surprisingly easy. I've done it a lot. There are lots of pair directors out there. Starting with the Coen brothers. I think most of the directors that I've worked with as a pair have either been brothers or romantic partners or best friends. So they've got a very collaborative relationship. And in this case, Richard and Wash have been together for almost 20 years, and they've been working together, and they're married. But what was really extraordinary is that Richard was diagnosed with ALS when we were working this movie. Right. So when we first worked on it, he was having difficulty with his speech, but it progressed rather quickly. So by the time we were shooting a year later, he'd really lost his physicality from the waist up. He could still type with one hand on an iPad, and that's how he directed. So he was there every single day with Wash, on an independent film with no heat and, one bathroom and, a really hectic schedule. They were there every day doing that. And I think for us what was so interesting and very inspiring is how quickly someone's disease recedes and how much you see that person. Which is kind of what this movie is about too. Is that Richard was communicating on an iPad, but he was very much directing. He was very, very present. He was very much Richard. And like Wash is much more kind of sentimental. Richard's much more practical. Richard is the quicker writer. We had a line, where I fall asleep, there's that scene where they're all saying, what are we going to do? Where's she going to go? Are you going to stay here? Should we put her somewhere? And I'm on the couch and I fall asleep. I'm supposed to wake up initially, and my line was, what are we having for dinner? What's for dinner? I said, that's going to get a laugh. And we don't want one there. And I was like, what should I say? What should I say? And Richard typed out, we were all like, it's hot in here, which is kind of beautiful, and so much about that. So he was very facile, really, really quick. But obviously, they were making a movie about that was, in a sense, mirroring what they were going through personally, which was pretty extraordinary.
Does that up the pressure working on a story like this?
Yeah, it just crystallizes it. I think it just makes it, more about. As an actor, the challenge is how are you alive on screen? How do you make it real? How do you how do you distill that? How do you make it happen? And I think because we were all surrounded by the real thing, it was something that you can't ignore. You have to really incorporate all of that feeling. It was, in a sense, it was a real privilege.
Well, you've worked with a lot of great directors.
Yeah,
and you just recently said something that I think is so smart, that I think that not a lot of people consider, which is, you said a director directs how the audience sees the movie. A director does not necessarily direct the actor.
A director is not an acting coach.
Yes.
And I think that's true. I think that every actor knows that, is that you don't go into a movie, you don't go into a situation, with the director saying, like, what do I feel next? You know, I mean, we all know what we're going to feel next. We all know, we are going to know that character better than the director's going to know the character. And I feel like the director should know the arc of the story and have the vision for the whole more than we do. I remember James Ivory said, an actor's knowledge is narrow and deep, a director's is wide and shallow. Which I thought was really funny, but it kind of an interesting, you know, like an interesting metaphor. But so it's true. So you know who that character is, and you know what they're going to feel and what they're going to do. But the director knows the scope of the movie and the vision. So that's how you collaborate, by saying, I know this and you know this, and how are we going to come together to make it all work out? You know.
Have there been times when you've had to step up and defend the character against something?
Not really. I have to say, a great director knows that you know the character. You know, I think most directors are like, thank goodness you know, because they don't want. They don't want to know that. You know, they want you to come with all of that stuff. I think where an actor can run into trouble is if they're not clear about something and the director's not able to explain the vision or tell you where the shot is. Because the other thing too is I feel like we can only exist within a frame. If the frame's not there for us, if they're not seeing us correctly, how do you give a performance? You know, it's hard.
When you're saying you read the script, do you read a lot of scripts?
I mean, as many as they send me. It's not like I have that much control. You know, I think that idea that you're just like, how many scripts should I read today? It's not like that, you know? Yeah. I mean, my gosh, you're just like, I don't read it. Yeah, you know, I mean, they think the only power that we ever have is whether or not we say yes or no to something. And for the most part, if you'll say yes to anything for a long time because you just want to work. And I believe in working. I believe in saying yes. And I believe in having lots of experiences, and I believe in working like across genres and across mediums, because I don't think working can hurt you ever. You know, but it's not like there are times when you're just like, oh, I just have too much to do. I don't know. Maybe there are 4 people in the world that have that issue, right? Maybe Leonardo DiCaprio has that issue, but I don't. You know, that's not mine.
Well, when did you get to the point where you were comfortable turning work down?
I don't think you're ever comfortable turning work down. You know, I don't think anybody, well, maybe Leonardo DiCaprio. But I think you're always thinking like, oh, I don't know. You know, I think for all of us, you know, it's a funny thing, but since I've been 30 years old, people have been asking that question, like, oh, women in Hollywood, and there are not enough roles, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there are not enough roles for anybody. There are not enough roles. I mean, it's not like the movie business is in the business of saying, like, what good roles should we find for actors? They don't. They're just looking for a movie that they can sell. It's a product. It's a business, you know. So finding really good, interesting roles is just something that I think that's challenging always.
And did that leap from the page when you first read the script for this?
It was so good. It was so good, and it was so unusual because it was a completely subjective journey. You know, I think it's very rare that you see that for a character, and especially for like a disease like this. It's always from the point of Lisa Genova, who wrote the book, said, "We know the story from the point of view of the caregiver or the family member. We don't know the story from the inside out."
Well, and for an audience who have perhaps seen this for the first time, what was your reaction the first time that you saw the finished product?
The first time I saw it, I was at Goldcrest, because I live in the West Village, not far from here, and they were screening it for me. They had a locked picture, and I went with my husband, who was so fantastic and so supportive and handsome. And I had my notepad with me, and I was just writing down things like, what about this thing when I put my hand in my face? You know, little things like that. And I heard this sound, you know, next to me, and I went, are you crying? And we walked out, and I said, oh, well, okay. Well, I said, I think that this, there's another take on this, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, don't ruin it. And he made me be quiet for like 45 minutes before I could talk to him. And I was so thrilled because I didn't know that it could affect people. You know, I didn't know. And he's seen other stuff, and he's a great partner and a great critic. And so I was enormously touched that he was touched. So that was the first time I knew that it could have people could have an emotional reaction to it.
How many times have you seen it since?
That's all. I am going to see it again. But you know what? I have to say, this is one of the things I talk about when I talk to really young actors, like, 17-year-olds and college students and stuff too. My favorite part is not watching it. My favorite part is doing it. Like, I really like doing it. I like, that sounds horrible.
It depends who you say it to.
That's right, I know. But I like the process. I like rehearsal. I like being with actors. I like, looking at the script. I like, there's a gnat or something. I like the shooting. I like working with the DP and the operator and the AC and the prop person and Connie and I like the whole collaborative. I like that part, and it's never better than when you're doing that. Like, watching it is never better than that. So when I talk to very young actors who are just starting out, I always say, if that's the part you like, then you will be okay, because that's the part that we can count on. We can't count on the result. We don't know the movie's ever going to get picked up. We never know if anybody's going to come and see it. We never know if anybody's going to come see our play. I did a play at the Westbeth years ago, and 2 people came. And we had to perform because that's how many people were in the play. Because the rule is, if you outnumber the audience, you don't have to go on, but if it's the same or more, you have to do it. So, all that stuff is completely out of your control. But if you like doing it, if you get something, back to that again, if you get something out of the experience of acting and being there with another actor and being there doing whatever, then that's okay. Because that is really the only guarantee, unfortunately.
Well, and we're thrilled to have the final product.
Thank you. Thanks.
And that's all the time that we have tonight. Thank you so much, Julianne Moore.
Thank you very much, you
Thank you all
guys.
for coming out.
Thank you.